Well, hello, Rockhounds, Lapidary lovers. Mike here. Welcome back to my channel. What do we got going on today? Well, what we got going on today is we've got this big, massive chunk of blue forest petrified wood up on my workbench. All right, so where did this come from? Well, this belongs to my stepson. He got this at an auction. He's actually been out to the blue forest and dug petrified wood out there before, but he got this at an auction, and it's been sitting over here in my lab for I don't know how long. He bought it, dropped it off here. I guess I'm like his storage unit. Okay. Anyway, he came to me yesterday and said, we really need to do something with this. And I'm like, we? It's yours, isn't it? He said, yeah, but you know how to do this stuff. So anyway, he said, we still got that vibratory lap. I said, yeah. My wife bought him a vibratory lap for a Christmas or birthday present. I don't remember which, probably 6, 7 years ago. It's been sitting in our garage that whole time. He's never used it. He says, well, why don't you get the vibratory lap out, polish this thing up? And I'm like, okay, why not? You know, it's sounds like fun. I've used a vibratory lap before. He has not, so that's why he's been reluctant to use it, I think. So we'll break in his vibratory lap with this. I've got one of my own, but we'll break in his with this, especially since it's got all new supplies and everything in it. Still after like 5, 6, 7 years unused. So it's down here. It's Covington Engineering, 16-inch vibratory lap. I've got the exact same model. In fact, I think I recommended this one because I have one just like it. When my wife was struggling to find something to give him as a gift. Well, apparently it wasn't the right gift because he's never used it. So, but what we're going to do is we're going to try polishing this up with this vibratory lap. So I'm going to, first step, of course, is to smooth it out because this is a pretty rough sawn surface. I don't know if you can see the saw marks in it. And it's got a big kerf up here where the saw hit the end and it broke off. So all this needs to be ground flat, and it's got some fractures in it, which I hope will not lead to this thing falling to pieces during the process. Because I think if we can polish this up, flatten it out, polish it up, I think it's going to be really pretty. It's got some actual chalcedony around the edges of the wood, and we're not sure what kind of wood this is. But some kind of wood from the Blue Forest out in Wyoming. So, well petrified, got a nice rind around it. This was algae. When the wood fell into sort of stagnant water, a lot of algae grew around it. And then the whole thing, wood and algae and everything, got petrified into rock. And a little bit of chalcedony formed around it too. So it's a beautiful piece as it sits, but I think it's going to be absolutely gorgeous if I can polish this up. All right, so let me get started. I need to get the vibratory lap ready to go here. I need to charge it with rough grit and get this piece of wood in it spinning. So let me find the rough grit and we'll get started. So for anybody who's unfamiliar with how these things work, um, it's got a pan here with grooves in it, and it's got a rubber bumper around the edges to keep your rocks from hitting the edge hard and spalling pieces off. There's a motor underneath with an eccentric weight on it. And what that does is that causes this thing to vibrate. It's on springs so that the top of it can vibrate while the base doesn't move, which is nice. So it hopefully won't walk all over the floor of my workshop here. Um, so you put grit and water in the pan, put your rock on it, and it should grind it flat. It may take a little while with a rock this big and rough. It may take several charges of rough grit, but we should get it ground nice and flat, and then we can start moving to finer grits. I'll clean out the pan between each grit and put finer ones in. And then once we get to the point where we're ready to polish, there's a polishing pad that can go in here and some cerium oxide polish, and hopefully we'll get that chunk of wood, petrified wood, shined up really nice and beautiful. It'll take a few days at the very least, maybe a week, but hopefully we'll get it done. So I see there's some debris in the pan. I'll clean that out, and then we'll start charging it with rough grit and water. Okay, so let's get some rough grit in here. This is actually my grit from my rock tumbling supplies. I'll just replenish it from the stuff that came with his kit. So we don't need a whole heck of a lot, but that should probably, well, a little bit more. That should probably be enough to start with, okay? Let me start this thing up. And I'm going to hit it with some water. Yeah, we're not quite level here. That might be a bit of a problem, but I may put a wedge or something under one side of it. Want enough water here to make a bit of a slurry. That looks pretty good. Pardon me as I get in front of the camera. Let's set this thing down in here now. Oh, there we go. Can you hear it? That's the sound of rough grit doing what it's supposed to be doing. Uh-oh. Yeah, we're walking. I was afraid that might happen. But, alright. I was afraid it might start walking across the floor. So what I might do is shut it down and put some rubber feet on the bottom of the thing. That'll help stop it from walking. And I might try to level it a little bit. The floor out here has a bit of a slope to it, so rainwater runs off. This is actually a driveway. So that's why we're hanging out in this corner of the pan, which is not necessarily a good thing. So I'll see if I can level it a little bit as well as stop it from walking. All right, I seem to have found a solution to the problem. Rather than putting rubber feet on it, I just put it out in the shell section of the driveway here. It's much easier to level it out here, and the steel feet on the bottom of it tend to dig into the shell and it doesn't want to walk anymore. And now that it's leveled, it moves around the pan a little better, which is nice, because that's going to prevent it from wearing out one section of the pan. So it needs to float around the pan better so it wears it evenly. So we're just going to be on rough grit for the next few hours. Once it sounds like the rough grit isn't doing anything anymore, I'll add some more and some more water. I'll keep an eye on it too, because the water does tend to evaporate pretty quickly. If this gets too dry, it just stops working. The grit becomes blue and everything just stops moving. But heat from the motor underneath will also promote evaporation of the water. So I'll keep an eye on it, add more water from time to time, and then once the grinding action slows down, I'll add some more grit to it. And we'll keep this up probably for the rest of the day, then have a look at it and see if we're making any kind of progress. This should grind this thing down fairly quickly. At least I'm hoping so. All right, we've been going for about 20 minutes, and I think it's going pretty well. It's moving around pretty freely. It's using most of the pan, not staying in one place. So, yeah, I think this is working pretty well. And also, there's still plenty of grit in there, but it's getting quieter, which tells me, A, some of the grit's breaking down, but B, the surface on the other side is probably getting smoother. It will get quieter as the surface on the other side gets smoother. So, I think it's working good. So, like I said, it's been about 20 minutes. This will probably go on in rough grit for most of the day, though. We're nowhere near needing to change out or add more grit, but that'll happen sooner or later. At this point, just got to make sure it doesn't dry out. And just let it go. Things are going good. So it's actually a pretty busy day here at my rock shop. I've got my 10-inch Raytex saw going, cutting some slabs. I've got, my tumbling station going. Got the vibratory lap going. And the big noisy thing over there is the 16-inch slab saw going. So, yeah, it's not just this. There's a lot going on here today. But I'll wait until the saws are quiet to film the next segment down here on this, so maybe you can actually hear me. Alright, things are a little quieter. The trim saw is still going, but it's not that noisy. I think you can hear me over it. The 16-inch saw is done anyway. I shut it off. So this has been going for maybe not quite an hour. And most of the grit has broken down. We've got a lot of mud in there now. A lot of fine-grained mud. That mud's going to be broken down grit and pieces that have been ground off the rock. So at this point, I'm going to put some more 60 grit in here. So I know from experience we're probably nowhere near finished on this thing. We may have taken the saw kerf off, but I'll bet the saw marks are still there. So yeah, we'll get the noise back up. If it's not making noise, it's not grinding, okay? It was getting awful quiet there. So sooner or later, I will have to clean all this mud out of here, just because it's going to cushion the action, and we don't want the action cushioned. We want it to be as rough as possible. So maybe when this next charge of grit breaks down, I'll clean the pan out, and we'll take a look at the bottom of the rock and see just how well it's cleaning up. Well, my goodness, that's making a lot of noise. Let me shut it down. It's not a grinding noise, it's just a rattling noise. So I think the grinding action's about done. I went in and had some lunch. This has been going for 2.5 hours. I think a second charge of grit has been turned into mud. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean out the rock, clean out the pan. We'll have a look at the rock. I imagine we'll probably need to do some more 60 grit. I kind of doubt that all those saw marks are gone, but let me clean it up and we'll have a look at it and decide where to go next. All right, well, I've cleaned all the mud off of it and cleaned out the pan too. Since I'm not switching grits yet, I haven't bothered scrubbing them down really good. Boy, that looks kind of nice while it's wet, doesn't it? But it's still got some really deep saw marks in it. But I mean, the saw kerf is gone. We're starting to smooth it out here to the edges. So yeah, it's just going to take a while to get it fully flat now, because we've got to plane the whole thing down to get rid of these. Okay, so that's a lot of material that has to come off. So it's going to be a long time in 60 grit, certainly for the rest of today and maybe tomorrow too in 60 grit. But look how nice the chalcedony around the edges is looking. There's a little bit of druzy quartz in there too. Yeah. Alright, so let me get this back in the pan and we'll get it going again. Alright, as before, let's get some more 60 grit in this now clean pan. And some water. You need a huge amount of water. Just, you want to make a slurry, but you don't want to make a big mud puddle. It's pretty good for now. We get the rock back in there, we'll start it up. Okay. And we're off. Some debris out of there. Alright, so probably the rest of the day on 60 grit. You know, when it starts getting muddy, I'll add a little bit more grit. When the mud starts getting sticky and it starts rattling really loud, like that, I'll clean it out again. All right, it's been going for a little while. I've added another agate to this. You really can't see much of it, but it's got mud all over it. but it needs to be flattened down too. And I find that having multiple rocks in the vibratory tumbler, they move around a whole lot more. They sort of move each other around and they don't stay in one part of the pan. So that's a good thing. Now, ordinarily for smaller rocks, I'd put each one inside like a piece of PVC pipe so they can't bang into each other and chew up their edges. But I don't have PVC pipe big enough for these. And we'll just do it and see how it goes. But I've got really good motion going on right now. Sounds like really good grinding action. So we'll just let them go, probably for the rest of the day. Probably have to add a little more grit soon, but working. So I'm just gonna let it go. Well, it's a little after 3 in the afternoon, and we still got some saw marks here, but it's certainly cleaning up a lot. And notice the color. We've ground the surface rind off of this, and we've got that dark blue forest color there underneath. See that? And this is definitely blue forest petrified wood. And this one's doing pretty good too. The one I'm using to chase it around. It's still got a little bit of the saw kerf over here and a little bit of rough area through here. But they're both cleaning up. So I'm going to clean the mud out of the pan and start them with some fresh grit again, because this is doing pretty good. So, and I'm not sure it's going to be done today, but going pretty good. So just a matter of wash, rinse, repeat. Keep it up until all these pieces are nice and smooth, and then we can move on to the finer grits. The finer grits should go a lot quicker, because we don't have to take off near as much material once we get these flat. We just got to take out the scratches from the heavier grit, and those are not too deep. There we go, clean pan, fresh grit, and we're off again. Looking good, making that nice grinding noise again. I love it. And these materials being removed. Once that mud gets so thick and heavy there, the grinding kind of grinds to a halt, even if you put more grit on it. So you got to clean the mud out every once in a while to keep the action going good. So we're just going to let it go, add a little more grit now and then, make sure it doesn't dry out. Same old thing. Probably run it for the rest of the day. All right, it took a lot of wash, rinse, and repeat, but I think I finally got all of the saw marks out of this piece of petrified wood. It looks really, really good. I think we are ready to move on to the finer grits with this thing. Now, believe it or not, this one still has some saw marks over there. I don't know if they're showing up. This is not ready to go. But I have some other stuff I need to do in rough grit later, so I'll use this to chase those pieces around. But yeah, don't ever make the mistake of thinking you've got fine lines left on your rock after rough grit and they'll come out with the next grit. No, they won't. The next grit's going to be 220, which is about a quarter the size of what I've been using, 60. So it would take 4 times as long to get those lines out of here as it would with 60 grit. So we're not going to do that. But this is ready to move on to the next grit. I need to scrub it much better. Take it over and scrub it with a stiff brush to get all traces of the 60 grit off of it. It's got a lot of nooks and crannies where they can hide. And then I will probably do it by itself, because we're getting to the point where I don't want other things banging into the edge of it and knocking pieces off, because they will scratch it. So we don't want that. I'll probably run it by itself in the rest of the grits, but it should not take anywhere near as long in the rest of the grits, because all we have to do is clean up the scratches and pits left in it by the 60 grit, which shouldn't take too long. And then we'll go to the next grit and clean up the pits and scratches left by the 220, and so on until we have a polished surface. So that should go pretty quickly compared to the 60 grit, which is taking the better part of 2 days to do. Alright, so I'm going to go clean the pan really thoroughly, and then clean this really thoroughly, and then we can move on to the next finer grit. Alright, so it's time to get started with the finer grits. We're going to go with 220 to start with. I've actually put the 60 grit away so I don't grab it by mistake. I want to add more grit to this thing. So just like before, we're going to put a little grit in here, wet it down, and then put the rock in there. I think I'm just going to run the big piece of petrified wood by itself right now. Oh, I need to put the ring back in, duh. Put the bumper ring back in to prevent the rock from hitting the sides hard and spalling bits off. Those bits would scratch. So the whole point of running the rock by itself is to prevent scratching. I don't want that other chase agate to knock bits off of it and cause scratches. So we'll just run it by itself and see how it goes. It's a little damp. Now, the one advantage of me doing this outside is there's a lot of splattering, which you probably really can't tell, but there's a ring of gray around this thing on our shell driveway here from stuff that has splattered out. If you do this inside, it's going to make a mess. I've seen people make a cardboard um, box around it just to catch all the splatter, which is not a bad idea. Or run tall, like Formica walls around the inside of it to catch the splatter, which is also not a bad idea. But I'm just running it outside. I don't care if it splatters a little bit. Okay, let me get the rock in there and let's get it moving. So I have very thoroughly cleaned this thing. Hopefully get all of the old grit off of it, but the outer crust on it is a little crumbly, so may have issues with it crumbling. Okay, let's start her up. It's much quieter with the smaller grit. There's a lot less noise. So that's normal. The smaller the grit, the less noise it makes. But you got to listen for that noise. When the noise stops and all you hear is the motor running, it's time to add more grit. Because if you're not hearing that grinding noise, you're not getting any kind of action in there. All right, so we'll let this go for a while. It'll probably take a few hours anyway to clean up that 60 grit surface on the other side. Well, here it is, out of the pan, washed off. Boy, it looks good when it's wet, but what I need to do is I need to look at it dry. Let me get it dried out and go find my loupe and have a close-up look at the surface here and see what the pit situation is. What I'll be looking for is pits and gouges that are bigger than average. The 220 will have left a lot of pits and gouges in the surface, but the 60 grit would have left much bigger ones. So if all the 60 grit pits and gouges are gone, we can move on. If they're still there, we got to go back for some more 220 until they're all gone. So I'm going to let this dry out and go find my loupe, and we'll have a close-up look at it. Well, on the whole, it looks pretty good, but I do still see some larger pits and gouges in it. So I think we're going to have to do 220 for a little while longer. But we're getting pretty close. Maybe another hour or two, and then we can move on to the next grit. Anyway, I need to clean all the mud out of the pan before we restart it again, because there's just so much mud in there that it's not working too well anymore. The mud gets sticky and the rock doesn't move around good and we don't get much grinding action. So, okay, let me clean out the pan, and we shall start it up again. Okay, all that sticky mud's cleaned out of the pan. Got some fresh 220 grit in it. Put a little water in, and we'll just do it again. Another hour or two, or until the mud builds up bad. And I'll check the rock again and see if it's ready to move on. And we're off. All right, be back when we're ready to look at the rock again. All right, I just had a close look at this, and the pits on the surface are pretty uniform. I don't see a lot of much bigger ones, so it looks like it's just uniform 220 pits. So I guess we are ready to move ahead to the next grit in the sequence, which I think is going to be 400. So let me get the pan cleaned out really good, get this cleaned up really good to make sure we get all of the 220 off of it, out of the nooks and crannies on the surface, and we'll get it going with 400 grit. Clean up those 220 pits on the surface, and it's every step from here on out is just cleaning up the pits left from the last step until we get it nice enough that we can polish it, which probably isn't going to take too long. If it wasn't that long in 220, it'll probably be fairly quick in every grit here on out. Okay, we get everything all cleaned up so that we don't have to worry about cross-contamination of grits, and we'll get it going again. All right, the pan, the bumper ring, and the rock have all been very thoroughly cleaned up. We got some 400 grit we're going to put in the pan now, and just like before, we're going to run it until we get rid of those 220 pits. All right, I have put the 220 grit away, so I can't grab it by mistake and put it back in here. That would be bad. All right, we get the rock in there and we'll get it started up. Here we go. Super quiet. Not going to hear much grinding action with this grit. So it's going to be more about time. I'll leave it in here for at least an hour and a half, 2 hours before I even look at it. So it's 3 o'clock now, so around 5, I'll have a look at it. Maybe we can get through 2 grits today. That'd be nice. Okay, this has had a couple of hours in the pan at 400. And looking at it with my loupe, I can still see some fairly large pits in there. Definitely some 220 pits. The surface is getting very, very smooth, though. It's actually starting to develop a little bit of a reflection, even after only 400. So I think it's going to have to go back into the pan for a little while longer, get rid of the rest of those 220 pits. Oh, it's so smooth, though. Getting there. I think that's going to have to be tomorrow because it's getting on towards supper time, and I don't think I want to start it up again. I think I'll just clean the mud out of the pan, and we'll wait till tomorrow and give it another couple hours in 400, and that'll probably do it. We'll be ready to move on to a finer grit. So let me get to cleaning, and we'll pick up tomorrow. Alrighty, after another couple hours at 400, I do believe we are ready to move on to 600. So we've cleaned the pan really thoroughly, cleaned this really thoroughly, gonna get it back in there at 600 and get it moving. And that'll be the last stop before we polish it. So this will be shiny pretty quick. And we're off with 600 grit. I'm using aluminum oxide this time instead of silicon carbide, just because I happen to have the aluminum oxide out. I think silicon carbide actually came with the vibratory lap, but I was using 600 for another project, so we're going to use the 600 aluminum oxide and see what kind of a job it does. I am not expecting this to take very long. It's getting late in the day, but I think this will probably be done with the 600 before the end of the day. And then maybe we can start with polishing tomorrow. Alright, we've been in the 600 grit for a few hours now. I think it's probably ready to move on to polish. So I'm going to clean it off really good and have a look at it. And I'll clean the pan too if it looks like it's ready to go to polish. And hey, we'll set up for polish. But that might be tomorrow again because it's the end of the day and it's about supper time. But we are making good progress on this thing. And I think it's starting to look pretty darn good too. Okay, here it is, cleaned up after a few hours at 600 grit. It's actually developing a little bit of a sheen to it. I don't know if that's showing up. I am tempted to go straight to polish, but looking at it with my loupe, I do still see some pits. I think it'll give it a dull polish, so I will probably put it back in the pan for another hour or two at 600 grit before I move it on. I'll tell you what, this thing is so smooth it's hard to pick up. It's slippery. But I don't think it's quite smooth enough for polish yet. So, but that's going to have to be tomorrow. It's getting too late. So tomorrow we'll put it back in for a little while longer at 600. Alright, so back on to 600 grit for a couple more hours. It's looking like it's taken about 4 hours per grit after the 60. It took a day and a half in 60. And it's looking like it needs about 4 hours in every grit after that. So it's only had about 2 hours in the 600 so far. So 2 more hours, hopefully, will do it. Yeah, I think it'll be close enough to go to polish after that. It's pretty darn close right now. So 2 more hours should do it. Alright, after 2 more hours in 600 grit, I'm thinking it is ready to go to polish. Can you see the sheen? It's getting a nice sheen. With the loupe, it looks quite a bit better. I mean, I think 600 is still pretty rough. If I was polishing glass, I'd probably take it to 1200 or higher before going to polish. But the kit that came with the fiber lap only goes up to 600 and then it goes straight to cerium oxide. So we'll try it and see how well it works. So next stop, polish. Alright, so after very carefully cleaning the pan and the rock, I've put the felt polishing pad in the pan, charged it with the pink cerium oxide and water, and put the rock on it, and we are starting the polishing process. We'll see how it goes. Now, up till now, it's taken about 4 hours per grit after 60 grit. Your mileage may vary, of course, depending on, the hardness of your rocks and whatnot. I'm expecting this to take quite a while. Certainly all day, maybe a couple of days before it's got a decent polish to it. So just let it go and see what happens. I just got to remember to keep it wet because this polishing pad will dry out just like, everything else up till now. The heat of the motor, evaporation, it'll dry out. So just got to keep it wet. And yeah, we'll give it till, towards the end of the day and have a look at it, see how it looks. And we'll give it another day if necessary. We'll give it as long as it takes to get a decent polish. Alright, so we're just going to let it go. So after about 4.5, 5 hours, we've got quite a froth going on over here. It's tending to stay in the same place, so I've rotated the whole unit a few times just to try and get even wear on the pad. So don't want to wear through and have it grinding against the aluminum down below. That is a heavy rock. And every once in a while I come out, maybe every hour or so, and just hit it with some water. Make sure it stays wet, doesn't dry out. And we'll give it a few more hours and then dry it off and have a look at it and decide whether it needs to go again tomorrow. In a few hours it'll be dinner time and I'll be ready to close up shop out here, so we'll see how it looks then. Well, hey there, check this out. This is after spending pretty much all day on the polisher. That is nice. That is nice. I think there's room for improvement. I'm gonna put it back on tomorrow and let it run some more. It has rained. It's everything out here is wet. Let me show you this. I covered the Vibrolap with a plastic bin to keep water splashing down the ground out here out of it and keep it from splashing grit into it. And I'm going to leave it covered up overnight just to make sure no nasty grit or anything gets into it. And hopefully it'll stay a little damp too, won't dry out. And then tomorrow we'll put this right back in for at least a few more hours. See if we can get it a little bit better. Although, I mean, it looks really great out here where the chalcedony is. Really, it's got just an amazing polish on it. The black Blue Forest stuff there, I find it's a little hard to get a good polish on it. But I'm thinking if we just let it run a while, maybe we'll get there. So, back on tomorrow. And then we'll see what the final result is after tomorrow. Hopefully it'll be even shinier here in the black part. The rest of it, I mean, it's just crazy nice. Just amazing. The reflections off of it. The lights above my bench here. But even the part, I wasn't expecting this part around the outside to polish up as nice as it is. But yeah, it polished up nice. Anyway, we'll see what tomorrow brings. I'll get it back on there, and we'll run it for a while tomorrow. Alright, so this has been going for the better part of the day. I think it's done. Well, let me put it this way. It's done whether it's done or not. This is going to be as much time as I've got to give it. We're going out of town tomorrow, and I need to clean things up around here. The rock has certainly had its way with the polishing pad here. There's a lot of buzz balls that have been pulled off, but I think the pad's still usable. I will pull it out, hang it up somewhere to dry, and then put it back in its plastic bag to make sure it doesn't get contaminated with any heavier grit, so it can be used again. Okay, let me get this rock cleaned up and we'll take a final look at it. There we go. Will you look at that reflection? Not too shabby if I do say so myself, huh? Yeah, very nice, very nice. I like that. I think Joe's gonna like it too. This was basically a project for him. He's going through kind of a rough time right now. I think this might put a smile on his face. I hope so. Anyway, I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. If you guys are happy with this and my explanation of how the vibratory lap works, give this video a like, give it a thumbs up. And subscribe to see my future lapidary videos. There will be more. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks again for watching this one. Bye.